My name was Amir Nasr. I was a High Court judge in London, a title that commanded respect and authority. With every ruling, I believed I was shaping justice, anchored in a system that felt unshakable. But beneath that veneer of conviction, I was drowning in doubt, a silent ache gnawing at my spirit. What did justice truly mean? And what lay beyond the constraints of the law I devoted myself to? In that courtroom, surrounded by the weight of diverse voices and expectations, I felt the unending pull of something greater, a question veiled in the shadows of my faith. As I read verdicts, my heart wrestled with an emptiness, a longing for truth that transcended mere legality. My conviction began to fracture the moment the light flickered out. I collapsed, enveloped in darkness, and when I awoke, everything had changed. I found myself not in the realm of men, but in a celestial courtroom, illuminated by a brilliance that defied description. There, standing before me, was Jesus. He called my name and shattered the illusions I had clung to. With urgency, he opened my eyes to a reality I had never understood. A fight for freedom, a truth unparalleled, and a revelation waiting to be embraced. Returning to my body was a battle of its own. I stood at the crossroads, a marked man, my faith now a needle pricking the fragile fabric of my life. The judgment of family and colleagues cut deep. Their distrust bore into my soul like daggers. Amidst their scrutiny, I wrestled with guilt, fear, and a stirring sense of betrayal toward the beliefs that once defined me. But this journey was not destined for silence. As I sought out hidden truths within the pages of the Bible, whispers from fellow seekers ignited a fire in my heart. It became clear I was called to share the transformation that unraveled me. I was not merely a judge anymore. I was destined to witness. Before we embark on this profound journey together, I invite you to comment below. Where are you watching from? And what time is it? I yearn to connect. And if you feel the tug of Christ in your heart, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Every revelation shared here could ignite a spark within you, a chance to break free and uncover the divine purpose awaiting us all. Let's begin. I never thought I'd find myself here, sitting in a London courtroom, surrounded by the weight of judgment and the burden of truth. My life was ordinary, a data analyst by day, a husband and father by night. I believed I was just another cog in the machine, conforming to societal norms. Until the day my world shattered. It started with a sharp pain that shot through my chest, a sensation so foreign, so helplessly alarming. I remember collapsing, falling into darkness, and then nothingness. But then, in that void, I found a profound awakening, an experience that would forever alter my perception of reality, of deception, and of spiritual war. In the depths of that silence, I was surrounded by a blinding light. I felt pulled toward it, as if it were a beacon calling me home. And there he was, Jesus, standing before me, radiant and serene, his presence overwhelming yet comforting. I remember gripping my heart, overwhelmed with emotions I never thought I could feel. The layers of my mundane life peeled away, revealing the spiritual war waging not just within me, but around the world. He spoke softly, yet his words pierced through the fabric of my being. Truth is concealed beneath a hidden agenda, a manipulation designed to keep the elite in power, while the masses remain in ignorance. In that moment, I realized the depth of deception in the world. The division among us, the conflicts born not from natural consequence but from engineered chaos. He showed me visions of leaders making decisions not out of concern for the masses, but for their own gains. I saw families torn apart by ideological differences, communities fractured by fear, all orchestrated to distract us from the deeper truths. I understood the role technology played, shaping our perceptions, feeding us curated realities. The button to fear was pressed, and I could see it so clearly. I was awakened to the spiritual warfare happening not just on the global stage, but in our everyday lives. Jesus revealed to me the urgency of this awakening, the necessity to break free from the shackles of complacency. I felt a surge of light and knowledge, unearthing secrets about our past and forewarnings about our future. I saw the climate of hate and intolerance consuming us, ignited by those in power who thrived on division. "You must share what you have learned," he urged. "For in your revelations lies the potential for healing, a chance to unite rather than divide." Each word resonated with fire, and I felt an overwhelming responsibility to bear witness to this truth, to call others into this light before it was too late. As I began to understand the magnitude of my experience, the visions morphed into scenes of conflict. Wars fought not for righteousness, but for control. Innocent lives caught in the crossfire of a game played by a select few who savor the power of fear and division. I could see the influence of those elite manipulators, pulling strings behind closed doors, orchestrating tragedies under the guise of necessity and progress. Jesus showed me that the greatest weapon in this spiritual war is ignorance. Each person living in the shadows of deception contributes to the chaos, fueling the flames of conflict with every act of indifference. In the flickering light of this revelation, I understood that our fight wasn't just against external forces, but also an internal struggle, overcoming the complacency within ourselves. The awakening is both personal and collective. I felt disheartened, yet resolute. I wanted to shout this truth to the world, to wake the sleeping souls, to tug at the heartstrings of those who've become numb. But all of this happened in mere moments, the memories of which were fading as I was being pulled back into the physical realm. The sense of urgency grew. I realized there was so much to be done, so many souls to reach, before the deception became insurmountable. And then, before I could grasp more of the knowledge or share it, the light began to dim. I was being drawn away, back to the stark reality of a London courtroom filled with voices, yet all I could hear was the calling of the truth echoing through my mind. The judge delivered a verdict, but I knew this was just the surface of a much greater story, one that was desperately yearning to be told. The revelation swirled around me like a tempest, and I could feel the weight of urgency settling in my soul. There was no turning back from this path. It was time to awaken others to the spiritual war that raged on around us. I've always prided myself on being a man of logic and reason, someone who stands firmly on the principles of justice. My name is Amir Nasr, and I am a High Court judge in London. With my stern appearance and deep-set eyes, people often see me as unapproachable. Yet inside, I've battled an emotional void, feeling that something monumental was missing from my life. Each day bled into the next, with the weight of responsibility balancing upon my shoulders, but I was haunted by a lingering sense of spiritual unfulfillment. I often questioned whether adhering to the rigid teachings of my faith was enough, if everything I stood for could provide the answers I sought. My life took a drastic turn when, during a routine checkup, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The news slammed into me like a freight train. Suddenly, all the time I thought I had vanished, leaving me with only an abyss of fear and uncertainty. In the weeks following my diagnosis, as I faced the ticking clock of my life, I often felt detached from the world around me. One particularly dark night, as I lay in my bed, drowning in dread and despair, I slipped into what felt like a deep sleep. But this wasn't sleep. This was a moment of transcendence, a brush with the other side. I found myself in a place illuminated by indescribable light. There, standing in front of me, was Jesus. His presence was so powerful, and I was engulfed in a deep sense of love and acceptance. It was overwhelming. I felt my spirit naked, laid bare before him, and as I gazed into his eyes, I saw the truth reflecting back at me. He spoke, his voice a mixture of thunder and whisper, calling me to awaken to the realities beyond what I had always accepted as truth. The revelation pierced through my heart. There's a hidden agenda woven through every fabric of your society. You must awaken to the spiritual war that engulfs us all. In that moment, I was shown visions, I witnessed politicians masquerading as saviors while perpetuating conflicts that ravaged nations. I saw families torn apart, friends divided, and communities struggling in darkness, all engineered by an elite few who thrived on the chaos, profiting from despair while keeping us sedated in ignorance. This wasn't just about politics. It was about the larger game being played, one where the strings are pulled from behind the curtains. I understood now that the deception I had been blind to was woven into the very fabric of our existence. I felt an urgency grip my heart, a desperate call to rise above the confines of societal norms, to seek the truth hidden in plain sight. Jesus revealed to me the power of awakening that ran deeper than mere knowledge. It was a divine calling to action. If you do not speak out, he warned, the deceptions will grow heavier, dragging souls into oblivion. My previous life, filled with the mundane distractions of daily existence, no longer seemed valid. My understanding of spiritual fulfillment shifted dramatically. It wasn't about rigid adherence to dogma, but rather an open, heartfelt pursuit of truth. I felt the burden of responsibility growing within me, urging me to channel this revelation into something greater than myself, not just for my sake, but for humanity as a whole. As the visions continued, I saw technology as both a tool for enlightenment and a weapon of mass manipulation. Social media feeds crowded with misinformation, the ways in which opinions were subtly shaped and identities were fractured. It struck me how easily we were led to mistrust one another, to fall into the traps laid out by those who thrive on division. I knew that time was of the essence. The spiritual war wasn't some distant future to contend with. It was raging here now. You must gather the awakened, Jesus urged. For the more souls that come into this light, the weaker the hold of deception will become. I felt a fire ignite within me, a determination to share this truth, to combat the ignorance plaguing our world. Then suddenly, as swiftly as I had arrived in this divine encounter, the light dimmed, and I could feel my consciousness pulling back toward the mortal realm. I was jolted back into my hospital room, my body confined to the restrictions of my illness, but my spirit felt reborn. The verdict I was reading in the courtroom just days later was no longer just about the law. It was a part of a much larger narrative, a narrative that needed telling. I understood now that every word I uttered, every decision I made, had the potential to either uphold the facade or illuminate the truth. The depth of my experience weighed heavily on me as I prepared to face my life and the choices I'd make. The urgency surged within me. I knew there was no turning back. There was a spiritual war to be fought, and I had awakened to participate. As I sat in the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with gravity. I could feel the weight of the decisions I had to make hanging in the air like a storm cloud, yet an unsettling emptiness twisted inside me. My name is Amir Nasr, and as a high court judge, I've devoted my life to justice, applying the law with impartiality. But each case felt more hollow than the last, like the echoes of a truth I couldn't grasp. I kept wondering, what are we really achieving here? Are we merely upholding a system built on blind adherence to tradition? The thought nagged at my conscience, a constant reminder of my own struggles with faith and doubt. Every day I entered the courtroom with a sense of purpose, yet left feeling a gnawing disconnect. I saw people who had lost everything, their lives hanging in the balance of a verdict, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my role was just a small cog in a much larger machine, one that often served a hidden agenda. It left me questioning whether I was truly fulfilling my duty to seek truth, or simply participating in a charade, maintaining the facade that justice was impartial. Beneath the surface, I was grappling with an internal conflict regarding the authenticity of my religious traditions. Was my alignment with these practices enough to deliver the spiritual fulfillment I desperately sought? Then came that fateful night when I found myself confronted by an existential crisis. A sudden collapse left me gasping for breath, plunging into a world devoid of sound. In that frozen moment, I sensed a profound shift, a detachment from reality that allowed me to drift into darkness. But it was in that very darkness I encountered Jesus. He stood before me, radiating warmth and understanding, his presence enveloping me like a blanket. I felt a sense of peace, a stark contrast to the turmoil I faced in life. In his eyes, I could see a reflection of the truth that I had always sought, yet failed to find. "You're fighting a spiritual war, Amir," he said gently. "And the deception that binds your society is deeper than you realize." Jesus revealed startling visions of our world, scenes that shattered my understanding of justice and morality. I saw leaders embroiled in conflicts, manipulating narratives to divide people and distract them from the larger truths at play. The elite wielded power like puppeteers, pulling our strings while we remained blissfully unaware of the deception surrounding us. I could feel the weight of these revelations tightening around my chest like a vice. The world was struggling under false pretenses, trapped in a cycle of ignorance manufactured by those who thrived on division and chaos. "You must awaken, not just for yourself, but to break the chains that bind others," he urged. The urgency in his voice was undeniable, sparking a fire within me, a call to action I couldn't ignore. As I grappled with the significance of this awakening, I understood that my duty extended far beyond the confines of the courtroom. I was tasked with delivering the truth, confronting the hidden agendas rooted in faith, politics, and society. I envisioned technology, our modern marvel, as both a tool for enlightenment and a weapon of manipulation. Through screens, the elite distorted reality and deflected attention away from the soul-crushing deceptions that erased our humanity. I felt despair washing over me, mixed with determination. "If you stay silent, Amir, the darkness will grow," Jesus warned. I knew I had to rise above my fears and echo this revelation to those who still slumbered in ignorance. As abruptly as the visions had come, I felt myself being pulled back into reality, a rush of air filling my lungs as I awoke in my hospital bed, the beeping machines bringing me back to the present. My body was weak, yet my spirit was ignited with resolve. In that moment, the verdict I was meant to read in the courtroom felt less like an obligation and more like a turning point, a moment of truth in a world rife with deception. I realized that each decision carried weight, and I held power not just within the four walls of the courtroom, but in every word I chose to speak and every precedent I set. The knowledge of my experience surged within me like adrenaline. I could not return to a life of complacency. There was a spiritual war raging outside these walls, and I had awakened to fight it. The path ahead was clear. I had to share my journey, rally the awakened souls around me, and ignite a movement that could challenge the very foundation of deception. The courtroom was charged with tension as I prepared to deliver my verdict. I could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on me, an unbearable heaviness mixed with an overwhelming sense of emptiness. I'm Amir Nasr, a judge in this great city, respected for my fairness and impartiality, but inside, I felt like I was crumbling. It was as if a dark cloud loomed above me, casting shadows over the very principles I once held dear. Each case I presided over echoed in my mind, the faces of those searching for justice haunting me. In that moment, I couldn't shake the thought that perhaps my life's work was but a performance in a show for the elite, a mechanism to perpetuate a system that often failed the very people it was supposed to protect. Then, without warning, I felt a sudden rush of dizziness, and everything around me began to blur. My vision darkened, and before I knew it, I had collapsed onto the cold, hard floor of the courtroom. As consciousness slipped away, I was thrown into a profound silence, a void that felt both endless and comforting. But this darkness quickly transformed into light, a brilliant, divine illumination that engulfed me, dispelling my fears and uncertainties. I found myself in a sacred space, an ethereal courtroom, where judgment was cast not by humans, but by divine will. There, standing before me, was Jesus. his presence radiating an aura of love and compassion that instantly eased my troubled heart. "Amir?" He called out my name, and the sound reverberated through my very soul. In that moment, I felt utterly known, as if all my secrets and doubts were laid bare before him. Jesus looked deep into my eyes, and I sensed the profound truth swelling within me. Truth about the spiritual war we are all embroiled in, the constant battle between light and darkness. Many are distracted by the illusions of this world, caught up in a hidden agenda designed to disconnect them from their divine purpose. He revealed. It was as if a curtain had been lifted, exposing the intricate webs of deception that ensnared humanity. The struggles over power, control, and division unfolded before me like a film, showing how the elite manipulated fear and ignorance to maintain their grip over the masses. As he continued to speak, revelations cascaded around me, each one more urgent than the last. Jesus spoke of the societal fractures we see today. The violence, the hatred, the endless cycles of mistrust and betrayal. These divisions are not happenstance. They are orchestrated, he declared. You must awaken to the truth that the world is caught in a battle for souls, and the war is fought not just in the physical realm, but in the hearts of every individual. I saw the reality of leaders masking their true intentions, cloaking themselves in rhetoric that distracted us from the greater issues at hand. Political power struggles were merely the surface of a much deeper spiritual conflict, one that echoed through the ages but felt unprecedented in its intensity today. The urgency of his message weighed heavily on me. Your role is not merely to judge, he said with a piercing gaze, but to help others see beyond the lies, to guide them towards spiritual freedom. In that instant, I understood that my life's work had a higher calling, a mission that transcended the confines of the courtroom. Jesus urged me to reconnect not only with my own faith, but to challenge the boundaries that have kept so many shackled to a mundane existence. You're a part of this awakening, Amir. You felt the emptiness of false traditions. Now use your voice to ignite the truth within others. As the light began to fade, I felt a jarring pull, as if my spirit was being drawn back into my earthly body. The messages were painfully clear, yet I was not ready to relinquish this newfound understanding. The blend of fear and resolve surged through me as I was thrust back into the reality of the courtroom floor. I regained consciousness amidst gasps and concerned murmurs, but this time, everything felt different. The cacophony of voices around me faded against the powerful epiphany I now held. A call to action ignited within me. I had seen the hidden agenda. I had tasted the urgency of the spiritual war. As I gathered myself, I knew I couldn't remain silent. I had been given a mission to share this revelation, to awaken those around me to the truth that had been concealed for far too long. When I opened my eyes, the brightness of the room felt harsh against the fog of confusion swirling in my mind. I was back in my life, back in my body, but an invisible weight pressed down on me like a stone. The courtroom, the cases, and the judgments. I was supposed to return to that world, but everything had changed. I had encountered Jesus, had tasted the truth of his revelations, and now I was faced with the skepticism and hostility of those closest to me. As my family gathered around me, their expressions ranged from concern to disbelief, and I felt the chasm widening between us. They viewed my experience as a betrayal of everything we had adhered to, our traditions, our beliefs, and my role within the community. Hearing their whispers, I could sense the shunning beginning, the fear that my awakening would disrupt the fabric of their faith. They regarded me with scrutinizing eyes, questioning, doubting, as if I was a foreign entity, an outsider trespassing on sacred ground. You've been deceived, my father warned, his voice a mixture of anger and fear. This talk of Jesus and revelations, it's not our way. Those words sliced through me, igniting a gnawing guilt. I had once been a pillar of our faith, someone they looked up to, but now I felt like a ghost drifting away from everything I thought I knew. The very foundations of my identity were crumbling, leaving me in a deep pit of isolation. In the days that followed, the struggle intensified. With each passing moment, I wrestled with the guilt that seemed to swell and consume me. How could I reconcile this new truth with my existing beliefs? If there was a hidden agenda at play, what did that mean for my family, for my career, and my identity? The meetings at the courthouse took on a surreal quality. I could hardly concentrate on cases, my mind haunted by visions of the spiritual war one had witnessed. As I stood in that grand room adorned with age-old law, I could hardly distinguish between justice and the manipulation I had come to see. Laws that were supposed to protect often served a darker purpose, entrenching the very deception that kept society in chains. Jesus' words echoed in my mind. You must awaken not only for yourself but for others ensnared in this deception. I felt an impending urgency, a call to action, yet I was paralyzed by the fear of losing my family's approval and my community's trust. The very people I wished to inspire saw me as a threat, as someone who had stepped away from the familiar path. Doubts crept in relentlessly. Was this awakening a gift or a curse? In the privacy of my home, I battled between the love I held for my family and the truth that Jesus had unveiled to me. Each night, I would lie awake, wrestling with my faith, and wondering if speaking out would alienate me further. This was a spiritual war on a level one never anticipated, battling not just external forces but the internal strife within my own heart. As the weeks passed, the isolation deepened. My colleagues noticed the shift in me, a flicker of uncertainty clouding my judgment. Conversations became strained, lingering doubts about my credibility infiltrating our discussions. "Are you okay, Amir?" they'd ask, concern lining their voices. They couldn't understand. Judiciously rendering verdicts felt like playing a part in a grand illusion. The disgust for the manipulation I saw seeped into every interaction, and I began questioning even those I once considered allies. Were they complicit in the grand deception I had witnessed? The more I focused on my experiences with Jesus, the more distant I felt from those accustomed to the status quo. In my solitary moments, I pondered the responsibility that came with this awakening. How could I share the truth of my experience without alienating those I cared about? I wanted to grab hold of their hands to pull them into the light of understanding, yet I feared the backlash would only deepen the divide. I recalled Jesus' revelations, the need for a spiritual awakening, a deeper understanding that sought liberation from the chains of ignorance. The world seemed to be teetering on the brink of chaos, with divisions stark and painful. Leaders sought power through fear, and social media fed the flames of misinformation, further entrenching the hidden agendas of the elite. Each day, the truth of my experience tugged at me like an unyielding thread, urging me to speak, to act, and to awaken others trapped in darkness. But the battle within raged as fiercely as the spiritual war outside. Determined to uncover the truth, I found myself wrestling with my fears and the burden of my beliefs. The revelations I experienced were overwhelming. After coming back from that divine encounter with Jesus, I felt an insatiable urge to know more. In the shadows of my daily life as a judge, I began exploring the Bible, my heart racing with each turn of the page. It was a secret journey, one that could put me at odds with my family and community. But I felt a desperate need to reconnect with the truths that had been buried beneath the weight of tradition. The more I read, the more my heart began to awaken to the possibilities of divine grace and spiritual freedom. Each verse felt like a lifeline, a testament to the light I had glimpsed in that otherworldly courtroom. I also sought connections online, discovering communities of ex-Muslims who had traversed similar paths. Their stories resonated deeply within me, their struggles, their doubts, and ultimately, their awakenings. I spent countless nights poring over their experiences, sharing in their triumphs, and learning from their battles against the deception that had long confined us. I wasn't alone in this spiritual war. There were others who understood the weight of familial expectations and the fear of losing cultural honor. The more I connected, the more emboldened I became. Together, we discussed the hidden agendas that seemed to govern our societies, shining light on how the elite manipulated our beliefs and fostered division among us. Despite the glimpses of hope and the newfound strength bolstering my faith, there always lingered an undercurrent of fear. Each day, I faced the threat of ostracism from my family, who viewed my exploration as a betrayal. My heart ached for their approval, for their love, yet I was haunted by the truth I had encountered. I found myself standing on a precipice, torn between the weight of cultural honor and the liberating truth that Jesus had illuminated for me. How could I reconcile my desire for spiritual authenticity with the fear of rejection that loomed over me like a dark cloud? However, the urgency of the spiritual awakening I experienced drove me forward. I found solace in the belief that this journey was not mine alone. It was part of a larger narrative, one that spoke to the condition of humanity. Every revelation that flowed through me ignited a passion to share with others, generating a fire in my spirit that demanded to be felt and acknowledged. I began to understand the interconnectedness of our struggles, the echoes of my own confusion reflected in the lives of those around me. The spiritual war waged not only within me, but across societies, battling against the forces of deception that sought to keep us divided and in pain. As the layers of my old beliefs began to peel away, I made a conscious decision to engage in this fight, not just for my awakening, but to help ignite the flames of awareness in those still trapped in darkness. I couldn't ignore the reality that the world was at a critical juncture, a moment ripe for awakening, yet filled with dangers lurking within the shadows. The more I learned, the louder the call to action became. I realized that the truth I found in my journey was not meant to be hoarded. It was a gift that required sharing, and I felt an unyielding compulsion to use my voice, to stand against the deception that had kept so many souls in chains. Each interaction I had with my colleagues in the courtroom, each verdict I rendered was infused with new meaning, and I knew the time to act was fast approaching. In the quiet shadows of doubt and fear, I found a glimmer of hope that ignited a fire within. After my clandestine baptism, I felt reborn, as if the waters had washed away not only my old identity but also the shackles of silence I had carried for too long. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. It required courage and a deep reckoning with everything I had believed up until that moment. I was Amir Nasr, a high court judge steeped in tradition, but now I was awakening to a new truth, one that defied the preconceived notions of my upbringing and faith. The worries of what my family and community would think pricked at my consciousness, yet the certainty of my calling pressed me forward. It was during one of those long, restless nights filled with the echoes of my past that Jesus came to me again. This time, the clarity of his presence overwhelmed me, a reminder of the deeper revelation that my spiritual war was far from over. He urged me to testify to the truth I had encountered, to share my journey of awakening with those around me, no matter how perilous it felt. With every promise of comfort and understanding came the reminder of the risks, the potential for alienation, for losing the approval of my loved ones. Yet, in the depths of my heart, I knew I had to speak out against the deception that plagued my community, the hidden agenda that targeted the vulnerable and unacknowledged. The more I contemplated my experiences, the more I understood the urgency wrapped within my newfound mission. I began connecting with others who had crossed similar thresholds, sharing my story and listening to theirs. The overwhelming sense of isolation I had once felt began to dissipate, replaced by a communal bond forged through shared struggles. With each conversation, I witnessed the potency of truth. It could sever the chains of ignorance and foster a spirit of love that conquered fear. I realized that this awakening wasn't just meant for me. It resonated on a collective level, a clarion call for others to awaken to the spiritual war raging within and around us. Yet even as I felt emboldened, I was acutely aware of the dangers that loomed overhead. The elite thrive on division, playing us against one another while diverting our attention from the very truths we need to confront. I had seen it too clearly during my encounters with Jesus. The manipulation of information cloaked in the guise of progress, the systems that perpetuated a cycle of spiritual and societal decay. Each session in the courtroom became a more trying experience, as I wrestled with the moral implications of my judgments in a world so steeped in deception. I knew that staying silent would only perpetuate the very conditions that confine so many souls. In the depths of my resolve, I crafted a plan for how to share my story, to be a vessel of revelation for those still trapped in the dark. I couldn't shy away from the potential fallout, the realization that my own family might shun me for stepping outside the rigid beliefs we had held together. But the possibility of sparking a change, of awakening others to the truth they so desperately needed, was a call I couldn't ignore. Jesus had shown me a glimpse of what could be, a world where love triumphed over fear and where spiritual freedom reigned. With every heartbeat, I felt time slipping away, urging me to act, to step into the light of revelation, even as the shadows of my past loomed large. The weight of my decision pressed heavily upon me as I stood in my office, staring blankly at the framed certificates lining the walls. My name, Amir Nasr, engraved on each one, felt like a relic of a past I could no longer accept. Today, I would resign from my position as a High Court judge in London. This was more than just a career shift. It was an act of liberation, a declaration of my commitment to the truth I had discovered through an unexpected encounter with Jesus. The spiritual war one had been drawn into, left no room for complacency. I felt an urgent calling to evangelize, to reach out to those still trapped in their own deceptions, my heart racing with the promise of a new beginning. As I walked out of the courthouse for the last time, I felt a sense of exhilaration mixed with trepidation. The bustling streets of London were filled with people following their routines, unaware of the awakening swirling around them. Each step I took echoed with the possibilities of this new journey, where my sole purpose would be to share the revelations bestowed upon me. Jesus had opened my eyes to the hidden agenda that governed our societies, one crafted by the elite to maintain control through fear and division. Questions raced through my mind. How many others were like me, longing for the truth but tethered by the weight of their traditions? I meandered through the crowded streets, the vibrant pulse of the city contrasting sharply with the turmoil within. I was determined to find those who were searching for answers, to connect with fellow souls yearning for liberation from the deceptions that shackled them. It felt as though I was navigating a labyrinth, each corner turned revealing the masks worn by those in power. Politicians spouting empty promises while wars raged on. Families divided over ideologies that only served to distract us from the sacred unity we could achieve. It was a painful realization, one that fueled my resolve to keep moving forward. Every interaction, every face I encountered, served as a reminder of the urgency of my mission. I began to reach out to grassroots communities and online groups, sharing my story of awakening and inviting others to partake in this journey toward understanding. The conversations flowed around me, filled with spiritual insights and shared testimonies of transformation. I could see the light flickering in their eyes as they connected the dots between their own struggles and the systemic deceptions perpetuated by the elite. With every person I spoke to, with every seed of hope I planted, I felt the weight of my past lift slightly, replaced by the exhilarating knowledge that I was part of a much larger wave of awakening sweeping across our society. But with this newfound purpose also came the gnawing fear of backlash from my family and community, the potential ostracization that awaited me at home. The thought of my loved ones rejecting me weighed heavily on my heart. Yet the love and truth I had tasted propelled me onward, offering solace in the face of uncertainty. I couldn't allow fear to dictate my actions when so many continued to live in silence, bound by the very beliefs that had once confined me. The inner conflict provided a fire that ignited a desire to speak louder, to challenge the norms that kept us all in chains. As I wandered the streets of London, I knew I was stepping into the unknown, but it was a risk I was willing to take. The awakening I sought was not just for me, but for everyone still caught in the web of deception, and the journey had only just begun. Years have passed since I made the brave decision to step away from my life as a judge, and in that time, I found myself in a community filled with warmth and acceptance. The transformation I underwent during my spiritual awakening has had a ripple effect, touching the lives of many who were similarly lost, searching for truth amid the chaos of deception. I remember the early days after my baptism, how every moment felt charged with possibility. I shared my testimony, recounting the revelations I received from Jesus, and slowly the seeds of hope began to take root in those around me. The struggles we faced, the battles waged against the elite powers that manipulate our understanding and spirituality, became the backdrop for discussions that were both profound and enlightening. Despite the joy I've found in this new community, my heart still aches for my family. Estrangement is a heavy burden to bear, and as I watch others reconnect with their loved ones, I am reminded of the loved ones I left behind in my quest for truth. I continue to pray for reconciliation, to find a way back to them without compromising the beliefs I've come to hold dear. The spiritual war I've encountered extends beyond myself. It is a collective struggle, and each day I pray that they too will awaken to the truth I have found. I hope in my heart that they'll see the light that shines from understanding, rather than the shadows that seem to cloud their judgments. In my new home, I've dedicated myself to supporting those who are still trapped in the spiritual systems I've transcended. Many share their stories of fear and confusion, echoes of my own past struggles. The deception we face daily is insidious, wrapped in the language of authority and respectability. The way leaders maintain their grip on power through societal division and misinformation is a topic that resonates deeply with us all. Each person I meet has their own version of the hidden agenda they feel binds them, a stark reminder of how vulnerable we all are in the face of manipulation. I often find myself referencing my encounter with Jesus, how he illuminated the truth and helped me break free from those deceptive chains. Each testimony shared in our circle reinforces the notion that we are not alone in this fight. Together we navigate the complexities of our existence, shining a light on the truths that have become obscured by years of misinformation. The awakenings that occur within each individual feel like tiny fireworks igniting. We celebrate them, knowing that every spark is a step away from the darkness. Many of us had been lulled into complacency, convinced that our struggles were insurmountable. Yet, in the presence of understanding and support, there is a transformative energy that begins to reshape our realities. However, I am always acutely aware of the ongoing spiritual war that rages outside our safe spaces. The envy of the elite remains ever present, feeding on our divisions. The technological advancements that ought to unite us are wielded as weapons against us, designed to deepen our fears and amplify our mistrust. I constantly remind myself and those around me of the importance of vigilance as we embark on these journeys of awakening. The fight isn't just against external forces, it's also a journey within ourselves, a battle to reclaim our minds and hearts from the lies that have long persisted. As I stand before my community, instilling hope in every conversation, I feel the urgency of this mission, this calling, becoming ever clearer. The time for action is now, as we all step into a world yearning for truth and spiritual liberation. Life as I knew it changed irrevocably one fateful afternoon. I was living as Amir Nasr, a high court judge, steeped in the rigid structures of my profession and, initially, in my faith. But then, during an intense case that weighed heavily on my conscience, I found myself grappling with more than just legal precedents. I was wrestling with the very essence of my beliefs. In that moment of desperation, I sought solace in prayer, but what followed was not the comfort I expected. Instead, I was drawn into a profound darkness that pushed me into the depths of my soul. It was an agonizing struggle that ultimately led to an encounter with Jesus, an experience that would shatter my understanding and usher in an urgent awakening. His presence was overwhelming, a light that pierced through the chaos of my life and illuminated the hidden truths lurking in the shadows. "Amir," he said, his voice resonating with authority and compassion, "you've been ensnared by a hidden agenda designed to benefit the elite at the expense of the truth." As the words washed over me, I felt a rush of revelations unfold, insights into the political machinations that governed our lives, the societal divisions manipulated by those in power, and the pervasive deception that kept so many trapped in fear. I was shown the landscape of our world, a battleground where the spiritual war raged silently, and I realized my life had been a mere reflection of the larger conflicts at play. With every vision that persisted, the weight of these revelations began to settle into my bones. I saw families splintered by ideological divides, communities torn apart by conflict, and lives lived in confusion, all while the puppeteers of society thrived in the shadows. The urgency of this newfound understanding strained against my heart. I had witnessed the truth behind the lies and felt compelled to share it, yet an internal battle raged on within me. Would there be space for my voice amid the clamor of established beliefs? Would my insights, born from such profound awakening, be heard? And if so, would they be understood? Returning to my daily life after such an experience was disorienting. Those polite smiles I received in the courtroom masked deeper truths, and I couldn't shake the feeling of impending conflict. I had a responsibility to speak out, yet the risk of alienation loomed large. My family and longtime friends were still steeped in those very same systems of belief that I now questioned. I felt guilt and fear mingle in my gut, aware that embracing this truth might cost me everything I had ever known. I began to fight back tears at the thought of the risk ahead, a realization settling heavily that my awakening wasn't just personal. It was a collective challenge to the status quo. In the depths of my heart, I understood that this journey is fraught with pain. Faith can bind us as much as it can liberate us. While I pray for reconciliation with my family, I am also filled with hope for others like me, those yearning for a deeper connection, caught in systems that bind rather than free. This spiritual war, this awakening, is not simply about me. It is a clarion call for all who seek the truth. My encounter with Jesus was not just a moment of revelation. It was the beginning of a mission to help others navigate the canyon of deception, to illuminate their paths toward spiritual freedom. Each day, I find the courage to speak, knowing that every shared testimony is a step toward healing, a gesture of defiance against the darkness that continues to loom over us. The reality, however painful, is that the journey ahead is essential for uncovering the divine purpose that could transform not just individual lives, but the very fabric of society itself. As we reach the end of this journey together, I want you to truly reflect on what you've just heard. My experience was more than just a glimpse into another world. It was a profound awakening to the spiritual war surrounding us, a call to action, reverberating through the very fabric of our reality. Have you ever felt that whisper stirring within you, nudging you to question the comfort of your established beliefs? In this chaotic world, it's easy to become numb, to let fear divide us, but the truth is begging us to awaken from the shadows. You see, this is not just my story. It's our collective narrative, playing out in silent desperation across the globe. Every moment we hesitate to share our truth, we risk allowing deception to thrive. The elite thrive on our ignorance, pulling strings behind the curtains while we remain entrapped in division and fear. I urge you, pay attention to the awakening within you. What truths have you uncovered in your life? Share your experiences in the comments below. I am eager to hear from you, to connect over our shared struggles and insights. If this message resonates with you, don't let it linger unspoken. Subscribe to Truth from Beyond and hit that notification bell. Every revelation shared here could serve as a beacon to guide you and others toward liberation from the chains of deception. The urgency in our fight for truth cannot be understated. The time is now to awaken and act. In the next video, we will delve into another profoundly transformative testimony, that reveals how people just like you have uncovered spiritual truths that shatter the illusions of our lives. Together we'll explore these narratives that speak to the essence of our existence and encourage greater awareness within ourselves and our communities. I'm Amir Nasr. Thank you for allowing me to share my journey with you. Remember, the war for our spirits is real, but so is the truth waiting to be revealed. Together, let's embrace this mission and awaken to the light that is ours to claim.